Great to have you with us. In our first story, government says it will have to audit arms in circulation before considering placing a ban on importation of arms into the country. It has, however, launched a comprehensive probe into all authorizations granted by the erstwhile John Mahama administration for the importation of arms. This follows claims by Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah that former Deputy Interior Minister James Agalga signed the authorization for the importation of a huge cache of arms, including 1,500 shotguns delivered as the Tema port last week. Here's a news desk report.
Government accused the NDC of double standards in its call for a temporary ban on the importation of arms for private use. The NDC's call for the moratorium follows the recent import of a large cache of arms at the Tema Harbour. The NDC in a statement said it was alarmed government permitted the import of the weapons. However, Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah at a news conference revealed NDC's former Deputy Interior Minister James Agalga gave approval for importation of the guns and bullets days before handing over to the NPP.
The permit under which these arms were imported was signed by the Honorable James Agalga, Member of Parliament, Deputy Minister for the Interior, on January 5th, 2017. So this permit we are talking about, which allowed these persons to import this cache of arms legally into the country, was issued on the 5th of January 2017 under the signature of the Honorable James Agalga. I have a copy of it here. I'll give a copy to you afterwards. And we find it strange that the very persons who issued the permit for the importation of these arms will today turn around and say that the Akufo-Addo administration has issued permits and therefore has to take the security situation of this country a lot more seriously than it is doing now. Where all of these points of alarm that they raise in this statement, all of these points of alarm that they raise, were they not known to them at the time that they were signing this permit? At the time that they were issuing this permit, all of these points of alarm, were they not known to them? And was the security of the state, which they are talking about today, non-existent at the time when they were issuing this permit? You can't appropriate and reprobate. You can't do this. And then when a new administration rather comes in and is the one that takes the necessary efforts to secure the consignment and ensure that it's kept in a place and not necessarily in the hands of persons with doubtful character, then you turn around issuing statements as though something untoward has happened. So the first point we want to make is that, indeed, the permit that was issued by the NDSC administration. The second point is that it's curious that after the election of 2016, 2 days to the handing over on the 5th of January, at a time of the transition when we had agreed that all major transactions of this nature had to be referred to both sides of the transition team, they issued a permit, and I want to read to you. Permission is granted to YADCO to import the underlisted explosives and accessories for the use of their clients who are all engaged in mining and quarry sectors.
Mr. Agalga is unable to confirm or deny he signed a letter for the importation of the weapons, but questioned why government failed to review the approval.
Evans, I wouldn't remember, but I have always maintained that the company in question is known to the Ministry of the Interior. And so if it turns out that the permit that was issued under my signature, I wouldn't have any thing to say about that. Saying that 2017 January is not the same as April or May 2019.
So, because the circumstances, the security circumstances have changed, the authorization you granted should have been stopped by this current government. Is that your argument?
Or suspended altogether.
Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah says government has launched the probe into all authorizations granted by the Mahama administration.
There's a broader inquiry to understand how many of these permits are out there and how many persons have already, done their imports in accordance with these permits, a good number of which were signed by the Honorable James Agalga and the NDC administration.
Speaking on Newsnight Thursday, former Deputy Interior Minister James Agalga said he had not seen the document the information minister is referring to. Joy News has since sent the documents to him. He has confirmed receipt but says he will issue a statement later. You're still live on Joy News today. With me, Daniel Dazen. Now, what we have with us are two very interesting documents that put some insight into the story. First of all, there's the initial documents that Mr. Kojo Nkrumah put out there, and that's showing on your screen now. It's dated 5th January 2017. That's the first document that Mr. Nkrumah put out, where permission was granted for the importation of some firearms. Now, there's a second letter that is making rounds on social media. Curious case of this letter is that it has a similar reference number as the one that was put out by Mr. Nkrumah, and it's rather dated 2nd January 2018. This would definitely put it outside of the remit of Mr. James Agalga. We are still working with Mr. Agalga and with government to verify some of these facts that has been put out. Staying with this story, security analyst Colonel Festus Boahin Abuaje retired says it will be proper for government to come out with a clear response on the call for the ban on arms importation as proposed by the opposition National Democratic Congress. Colonel Abuaje noted the current back and forth between the opposition and government does not address a substantive issue on the call for the moratorium.
Any responsibility as to granting of applications or granting of permits to take delivery of weapons, both parties will be at fault. But I'm saying that both parties are not at fault. Both parties in government used their requisite legal remedy to meet the requirements of citizens, either of an economic, financial, or other nature. These are the comments that I think I have. For the consolidation of our democratic practices and traditions, all statements, all positions taken by both parties in government or parties in opposition need to be treated with a certain degree of respect, so that we can encourage ourselves as political entities to accommodate one another. So I would think that within the next few days, if I should say, that the government will come forth and explain itself as to what it actually treats the substantive matter from the opposition relating to the moratorium. But as you rightly observed, the Minister of Information's statement did not touch on that. It tended to try and assign blame, culpability, or responsibility to the former government. That's the original authorization, which I said is not the issue now. So let's all hope that the government will come back later and explain to the citizens, not only the opposition party, what it makes of the proposition or the proposal by the opposition for the moratorium on the release of those weapons.
Now, my colleague Joseph Akable spoke to the information minister about placing a ban and placing the ban, and Mr. Nkrumah explained government's position.
As I speak to you, there is an audit of all the permits that have been issued. Indeed, it is as a result of that audit that we discovered that this permit, pursuant to which this importation has been done, was actually issued 2 days to the handing over of power. When all of that exercise is concluded, whatever the findings be that are required to be put in the public domain, we'll do so and put them in the public domain. I think your viewers and your listeners are aware that this country has a legal regime that governs the use of arms or the importation of arms, and for those who have justifiable reason so to import or to use arms, they do it in accordance with the law. But as at now, that general audit is ongoing of all the permits that have been issued, of all outstanding consignments. And as and when that is done, any additional information will be made available. It is only curious that in this instance, the people who issued this permit are the ones shouting the loudest that something untoward has happened, and we think that the people of Ghana must be given this information, even in these early stages.
In the related developments, the chairman of the International Advisory Council of the International Action Network on Small Arms, Bafo Doche Amwa, wants accurate data on arms in circulation for proper accountability of weapons acquisition.
On small arms and light weapons, which was the baby of civil society, which governments took over and agreed and signed, demand proper accountability of weapons and arms. And so definitely not having adequate data is not the best. I think efforts should be made to make sure that imports are monitored, accounted for, and then when something happens, we'll be able to, as it were, identify where the challenges are. But the fact that weapons can be officially brought into the country and we have no accounting of these weapons, it should be a matter of concern to all. Because we've been told a probe has been launched by government, and it's easier to make statements when you are sure of what the facts are. So sometimes, yes, we don't speak too quickly. We try to monitor the situation and await the information as it turns out by the results of a probe. So yes, at the appropriate time, we will come up with a statement for sure.
Away from that story, operators of tricycles, popularly referred to as pragia, embarked on a demonstration through the major roads of the Techiman municipality, accusing the police of arresting and intimidating their members. The hundreds of protesters marched to the MTTD office, the Divisional Police Command, and to the Municipal Assembly to drum home their point. They called on governments to consider legalizing the commercial use of motorbikes and tricycles or risk losing the 2020 elections. There's more in the following report by Anna Sabit.
The protests embarked upon by the tricycle riders began at the Kenten School Park through the principal streets of Techiman in the Bono East region. The protesters marched to the MTTD office and then to the Divisional Police Command before finally meeting the Municipal Chief Executive at the Techiman Municipal Assembly. The protest, according to the hundreds of riders, is to express their displeasure at the police over the arrest and what they described as intimidation of some of their colleagues.
The reason for our demonstration in Techiman is about Okuninje. The reason why he's arresting some of our colleague drivers, sending them to jail. At the moment as I'm talking to you now, we are having 18 drivers who he sentenced them to jail. Why? Why? Because what is your reason? We don't understand. So why am I working with my vehicle, my tricycle, and I'm paying my tax and you're arresting me?
We have over 2,000 of these tricycles working in town. Over 2,000 of these young youth are employed through this. We could have opted for being armed robbers, yet we are here working. They do not understand why tricycles are being used in other parts of the country for commercial purposes, yet they are being prevented from doing same in Techiman.
Why is Techiman here? Praga is working and the police are disturbing us. Because Kumasi, Praga is working. Boku, Praga is working. Bolga, Praga is working. Wa, Tamale, everywhere. But why Techiman, Praga, they are disturbing us? Techiman not part of Ghana? My question mark.
Techiman, the whole Ghana, apart from Techiman, they be
They appealed to government to legalize the Okada trade or risk losing the 2020 elections. At a point, the MCE, who was out on break when the protesters arrived, showed up. He calmed them and in a brief address assured them there will be a meeting with the police and their leadership.
I listened to them, I discussed with them, I decided to talk to them. I've heard their side of the story. I'm yet to talk to the divisional command of police over here to discuss the issue and to know how we are going to solve the impasse between the association and the police.
He, however, called for a national debate on the legalization of the tricycle or Okada trade, as it now serves as an employment avenue for the teeming youth. From the assembly, we visited the Divisional Police Command.
It has to do with two different or separate cases. The first one had to do with a tricycle rider who a lady hired from the town to Hanswa, a suburb of Techiman. So they took the lady to Brigade, another suburb of Techima. Then they robbed the lady of her 3,000 Ghana cedis using scissors and knife, and took her phone as well. Fortunately for the lady, she saw the number of the tricycle as 689. So he immediately informed the police. Then we called the chairman of the Praja, who also led us to, and he was arrested accordingly. But the people are saying that the police have been arresting their guys so much. The other case has to do with Okada. There are people who have bought their private motorbikes, and they want to use it for commercial purposes without registering for commercial purpose. Police has warned them severally, but they are not stopping. So we said enough is enough. Then the police arrested these guys, sent them to the circuit court, incarcerated into prison custody in Sunyani.
Reporting for Joy News, Anas Sabit, Techiman.
Now, the Environmental Protection Agency will from June this year clamp down on motorists whose vehicles emit smog-forming pollutants. Deputy Director of the Environmental Protection Agency, Ebenezer Apa Sampong, announced that his outfit will come up with a new standard to decrease emissions of dangerous pollutants from engines. He made these statements at an Accra Metropolitan Assembly's roundtable discussion on climate change. Henry Kwesi-Bedu has more in the following report.
Dangerous fumes. Exposure of carbon monoxide can cause headaches, dizziness, nausea and fatigue. Overexposure, however, could lead to death. Unfortunately, many vehicles and motorbikes in the country emit such poisonous fumes which can harm lives and the environment. With transportation being a major cause of air pollution in Ghana, the World Health Organization estimates that air pollution kills an alarming 28,000 Ghanaians in a year.
Air pollution today kills around 7 million people globally, and that is very much the case for Ghana and for Greater Accra region as well. In particular, for Greater Accra region, the initial estimates derived from the collaborative effort of the Urban Health Initiative show that every single year about 2,000 people die due to air pollution-related conditions. And what does that mean? Which are the diseases affected by air pollution? These are respiratory diseases, but also cardiovascular diseases, myocardial infarction, stroke, also lung cancer, pneumonia, particularly for children, but also for adults.
In densely congested traffic, drivers, passengers and pedestrians are exposed to a cocktail of harmful fumes. Acute respiratory illness caused by air pollution is one of the top 5 causes of outpatient hospital visits in the country, according to the Ghana Health Service.
Sometimes when people die and we are doing post-mortem, when we cut them open and we slice up the lungs, you see black dots in the lungs, telling you how much of these things they have inhaled over the course of their lifetime.
However, from June 2019, the Environmental Protection Agency says it has an elaborate plan to deal with the problem. Ebenezer Apa Sampong is Deputy Director of the agency.
We've been working to introduce some motor emission control systems or programs in this country. The first block is to do the studies which we have done to develop a standard for vehicle emissions, and fortunately that has been done together with the Ghana Standards Authority. So now we do have a national standards for vehicle emissions. Your vehicle will have to go through some remedial process to ensure that the engine is fixed, and then before you can be brought back onto the road. The standard certainly will be adopted this year, hopefully in June.
One of the greatest challenges the human race is confronted with is that of global warming and climate change, which is mainly caused by emission of dangerous gases, with exhaust gas known to pollute the air more often due to the increase in demand for the use of motor vehicles. In the world at large, Ghana has a lot of work to do to achieve SDG goal of ensuring good health and well-being. Henry Kwesibedu's report for Joy News.
Away from transportation, students and teachers of Ampeyo Krofrom DA Junior High School near Kumasi arrived in school Thursday morning to the shocking sight of their burnt classroom block. Displaced victims suspect arson in the blaze, which started at about 2 a.m. and left furniture, computers, books and other school materials completely destroyed. Traumatized school authorities say the incident will negatively affect academic work, especially as final year students prepare for the Basic Education Certificate examination.
Devastated students loiter around as their teachers sit in groups to discuss the destruction at the time of our visit to the school. A few curious ones tried to salvage some burnt books from the child debris. Joyce Osemenu is headmistress.
Around 2 a.m., I had an anonymous call, and not knowing one of the people known as Bismarck, she called that there was a fire outbreak at our school. So I said, I'm staying at another community. So I asked them to arrange for a taxi around for them to come and pick me. When I came, the fire officers were around, assemblymen, the PTA, SMC executive were all there, and everything was burnt like that. We have lost a lot. If for today, and then if about 2 or about 3 weeks coming, they are going to write BEC. Even Monday, we are to write something, to prepare for the Form 3. So look at the trauma. Form 3, all the furniture is burned. Everything, every school record, every textbook is burned. So that is what we are facing. It's affected us and everybody. We don't have, it's like we are coming to establish new school.
The cause of the fire is unknown. Assemblyman for the area, Bismarck Adejumo, however, suspects arson, for which he has lodged a complaint with the police for investigation.
There is nothing like electrical torches or fire appliances which causes all these things. But I believe someone was hired to come and do so. We are still doing our investigation to bring such a person into book. And I believe within a week or two, definitely something will happen. Individual behavior cannot be measured, cannot be quantified, and cannot be known. Some people are like that. Even if we give them 50 Ghana cedis to go and lose human life, they can do. Because when the fire service came, though they have not released any report for us to know that this is what really caused about the fire outbreak. But looking at the technical aspects and looking at the technical fault of what happened, we can really say that it's someone who did that.
Meanwhile, officials of the Achimakwangoma District Assembly are asking the school to share facilities with nearby Ampami GHS pending renovation of the burnt structure. From Ampeyo Krofrom in Kumasi for Joy News, Oimenteria reports.
Back to Accra, and Health Minister Kweku Agyemang-Manu says the lack of a forensic audit report on the Central Medical Stores fire is hampering prosecution of the suspected arsonists. In 2015, medical supplies worth about $8 million were destroyed in an inferno. Investigations after the incident blamed the fire on arson. There have been concerns by Ghanaians, civil society groups and some foreign missions on why the suspects have not been prosecuted. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Robert Jackson, had called for prosecutions. He spoke to Ghana Web in March 2018.
There's definitely been progress with the creation of an Office of the Special Prosecutor, the appointment of Mr. Amidou, but we need to now see him actually prosecute people. I personally have been very troubled that no one has been prosecuted for the Tema Central Medical Stores fire, because we saw almost $80 million worth of commodities go up in flames. We know who the culprits were. Those people should be on trial by now. I don't think 3 years is rushing the system. I think that, yes, cases have to be prepared well, but my understanding is that the investigations into the arson, which apparently caused the fire, were pretty exhaustive. And so based on that information, I would think it would be possible to develop a case.
The health minister says prosecution has delayed to the absence of a forensic report. Meanwhile, the Attorney General is studying the evidence available to determine if the state could mount a successful prosecution.
The report that was given us stated emphatically that there was arson. This was a BNI report. Meanwhile, in that same report, the concluding portions, they said that forensic audit should be done. So on advice, it was like, if you haven't finished forensic audit, you can't take anybody to in court. Technically, you stand likely to lose your case. So we subjected this matter to some rigorous engagement. In the process, the Auditor General picked the documents with the support from some of our donor partners because they were interested, especially DFID, commissioned a forensic audit to be done. Unfortunately, evidence had been destroyed. Because 3 days after the fire outbreak, under the guise that they were going to redevelop the central medical stores, a contractor who was doing some work somewhere was mobilized to the site that they were going to rebuild. And after he clearing the entire place of all evidence that could have been gathered for forensic work stopped, the basis that there was no funds available for that project. So we have referred this matter first to YOCO, to Attorney General's office. The forensic auditor has submitted his report to the Auditor General. He also has submitted to the, Attorney General's office. And the three of us, plus YOCO, the Ministry, Auditor General, Attorney General's office, we are still looking at the forensic report to see if we can have some merit with some evidence that we have on our hands to see if we can do prosecution of some people. That is where we stand on that matter.
The government is also considering terminating a contract with a Ghanaian company, Jakpa Arts Business, for the procurement of 200 buses worth 2.4 million euros in 2010. According to the health minister, a report on a technical examination conducted on 30 of the ambulances which were imported said the buses were defective and not fit for purpose. Speaking as the Mr. Press series on Thursday, Mr. Jumaimenu said government will terminate the contract and demand refund if the Attorney General advises.
I got a call from the President's office last week. The President is not comfortable about why we are leaving the ambulances sitting down there. Then I responded that, tell the President for me, that the ambulances were rejected by the ministry even before I joined in, on the basis that it did not meet technical specifications. And I've seen a technical report which says that those type of buses cannot be used for ambulance because they were created for cargo and they have holes underneath. And ambulance with blood and infections and all that, if you try to use that ambulance, you wouldn't know how hygienic or safe they will be. So we can't negotiate to take anything. For us, we haven't received any items, but unfortunately, some payments, LCs were done and they were drawn. They were supposed to supply 200. They did only 30. So we are now engaging the Attorney General to see, after that long delay for non-performance on the part of the contractor, whether there will be merit for us to terminate the contract and demand refund of what monies had gone to the suppliers.
And finally, before business, Upper West Regional Minister Dr. Hafiz bin Saleh had stated that the gains made by the New Patriotic Party in the 2016 election was phenomenal and should not be allowed to retrogress in 2020. According to him, the dream of the forebears of the Dankwa Buzia Domo tradition is for the NPP to secure the majority in the Upper West region. He urged supporters to ensure that it does happen. Dr. Hafiz bin Saleh made the statement as the Upper West launch of the SD Dombo Foundation at Drapa.
The regional launch of the SD Dombo Foundation for Development and Leadership Studies is a sequel to the national launch of the foundation in December 2018. SD Dombo was born in 1923 at Dwori in the Jiriba municipality of the Upper West region. From a humble beginning, he rose up to become the chief of Duori and later became the deputy leader of the then opposition in Ghana's Legislative Assembly in 1969. Chief of Duori, Natik and Sylvester Dombo utilized the late SD Dombo for his immense contribution to the development of northern Ghana.
We are here because Chief SD Dombo gave us an example of sacrifice, of dedication to principle, and of devotion to self-determination, service to Mother Ghana and the MPP. Let today convict, inform, reawaken sleeping consciences, and signify a decisive change in the fortune of the man Dombo.
Upper West Regional Minister Dr. Hafiz Bin Sali, who was a guest speaker, said Chief SD Dombo could have been the leader of the United Party, but he selflessly ceded it to Dr. Kofi Abirfa-Buzia.
For starters, let us embrace the fine qualities of selflessness, patriotism, courage, dedication, fearlessness, fairness of thought, and integrity, since these qualities made Chief SD Dombo a national icon.
Dr. Bin Sali noted that the gains made by the new Patriotic Party in the 2016 general election was phenomenal and should not be allowed to retrogress in the 2020 polls.
I am committed to ensuring that the dream of Chief SD Dombo, BK Adama, Abaifa Kabo, Jato Keleo, Mumuni Dimbie, and Alhaji Alassane Bin Sali is realized in the region. They wanted the Upper West region to be an everlasting stronghold of the Dankwa Dombo Buzia tradition. We have an opportunity to ensure that the new Patriotic Party becomes the majority party in the Upper West region in the 2020 election. All hands must therefore be on deck.
A book authored by Anna Ajay and Gabriel Banaku entitled SD Dombo, a biography of an iconic Ghanaian statesman, was later launched by the Upper West Regional Minister. Reporting for Joy News, Rafiq Salam, Jiroba.
Coming up in business, the Private Enterprise Federation blames the Securities and Exchange Commission for challenges in the capital market.
Could this happen? If SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, had been on top of their job, wouldn't they have examiners going to these institutions?
Daryl has details after this.